resistance to neoliberal capitalism. He and his partner are hoping desperately to find academic jobs for next fall.
Thank you all for coming. No luck so far on the job front. I'd like to thank you, Eileen, for putting this panel together and giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you all today. And as the last speaker, I must speak quickly, I believe.
You have plenty of time.
Okay. My paper is entitled Spilled Wine, Perverse Fathers and Neoliberal Enjoyment in Colin Taven's Alcmaeon in Corinth. Late capitalism demands a culture of consumption, a culture in which products are continually bought in order to sustain the action of markets. According to Todd McGowan, the result of this structural reliance on consumption is a shift in the cultural laws organizing at least Western society. McGowan argues that neoliberalism has catalyzed the transformation from a society founded on the prohibition of enjoyment, and thus the dissatisfaction of its subjects, to a society that commands enjoyment or jouissance, in which there seems to be no requisite dissatisfaction. This is the world of Irish playwright Colin Taven's 2004 play Alcmaeon in Corinth, which features a cultural economy running on excessive consumption and the commodification of everything: women, religion, family, monarchy, friendship, and so on. This is a society in which everything can be paid for, from family life to the god's favor, and this market value schema eclipses all other standards of value. The imperative to enjoy becomes paramount, threatening social stability. In Taven's play, both Alcmaeon and Creon, who's the king of Corinth, struggle with sexual desire for Tisiphone, Alcmaeon's long-lost biological daughter and Creon's adopted child. In deciding to, knowingly or unknowingly, violate the incest taboo, these fathers abandon their symbolic positions as representatives of cultural law, which in turn threatens the dissolution of all social order. Now, only a few fragments of Euripides' original Alcmaeon in Corinth have survived, and so the storyline is not all that well known. But in the interests of time, I'm only going to give a thumbnail sketch. The extant fragments and broad contours of the story in Apollodorus' Library of Greek Mythology allowed Taven to reconstruct the basic events of Euripides' play, though his themes are decidedly contemporary. Like Orestes, Alcmaeon murdered his mother, and as Apollodorus recounts, he was pursued by the Erinyes of the matricide, and in a state of madness went first to Oacles in Arcadia, and from there to Phegeus and Sophus. Taven's play recounts events during the time of Alcmaeon's madness, which drives him across Greece, sleeping with hundreds of women, which is hardly the worst punishment a Greek tragic hero ever gets. Years before the play opens, Alcmaeon had secretly left his infant children, Tisiphone and Amphilochus, in Corinth to be raised by the queen Creusa as her children with Creon. About 15 years pass, and Creon is painfully in love with Tisiphone, whom he believes is his daughter. Creusa is aware both of her husband's affections and of Apollo's prophecy that the first man Tisiphone sleeps with will be her father. Jealous of her own position as queen, Creusa sells Tisiphone and her brother Amphilochus to Nicoretta, the temple priestess of Aphrodite. When Alcmaeon comes looking for his children, Creusa convinces him that they died. Meanwhile, Creon takes Alcmaeon to Aphrodite's temple, where they hire hetaria, or holy prostitutes, which is basically all this temple does in the play. Little does Alcmaeon know that the new prostitute he hires is his long-lost daughter, Tisiphone. The mistake is revealed, pre-incestuous sex, by Amphilochus, who tries to kill Alcmaeon before discovering the man is their father. Together, father and son return to the palace to denounce Creusa, whereupon, in good tragic fashion, she kills herself off stage. Hero wraps up the action by predicting the future. Now, much of Taven's interest in the play focuses on the consequences of the neoliberal shift to a culture of enjoyment, which he experienced both in his working life in Britain and in Celtic Tiger-era Ireland. Under Martin Wilde's direction, the premiere performance of Taven's play evoked both the contemporary Newcastle party scene, this play premiered at the Live Theatre in Newcastle, and a sexually rapacious image of ancient Corinth. This Corinth is full of dancing, drinking, prostitutes, the use of power, and above all, money. This is a world built on the imperative to enjoy. And when the social injunction becomes to enjoy rather than to renounce enjoyment, individuals become increasingly atomized as they pursue private jouissance and abandon commitments to the social, which require giving up private enjoyment. McGowan writes that when private enjoyment becomes of paramount importance, the importance of the social order as a whole seems to recede. The twin problems in this shift are that it threatens both individual enjoyment and the social itself. When pursuing enjoyment directly, the problem becomes the impossibility of fully enjoying as much as the phantasmatic other who's believed to have full access to jouissance. Paradoxically, circumventing a prohibition, archetypically the incest taboo, allows enjoyment without establishing the impossible demand to always enjoy more. The imperative to enjoy also compromises society because the preservation of society depends on renunciation, while enjoyment thinks only of the moment. In the neoliberal period, the break of social prohibition is being largely eliminated, and I can talk a lot more about neoliberal cultural politics. Rather than conceptualizing the social as a force organizing people in a collective sacrifice of enjoyment, global capitalism isolates individuals pursuing selfish desires. And this is what both Creon and Alcmaeon experience in Taevan's play. Although Alcmaeon's promiscuity results from his madness, the real punishment he encounters is precisely the trap of enjoyment, namely, that the command to enjoy cuts off the possibility of enjoyment. Early in the play, Alcmaeon needs to remind himself not to be seduced by beautiful women because behind the pretty face hide the Erinyes. But the society of enjoyment rejects the idea of abstention or moderation. And in this case, Creon brings Alcmaeon to Aphrodite's temple to spend an evening with the prostitutes, and again, neither of them know that Tisiphone is there. Initially, Alcmaeon tries to resist, but alongside Creon and Nicaretta's urgings, the Furies push him to lust. Alcmaeon says, "What harm sing those kind ones in my head? What harm in one more woman in my bed? You've had so many, how can one more hurt?" From three sides, Creon, Nicarette, and the Erinyes in his mind, Alcmaeon is bombarded with the demand that he enjoy, that he give in to his jouissance, even though he knows that it is part of his punishment for matricide. And indeed, when Alcmaeon chooses the veiled Tisiphone and brings her to a room, his access to enjoyment is curtailed. In Tisiphone's face, he begins to see his own mother, her grandmother, unbeknownst to either of them. Alcmaeon laments, "I must be mad when every girl I meet begins to resemble my own mother." Despite the imperative to jouissance, Alcmaeon encounters both an ironically applicable incest taboo and his own guilt as a matricide. His potential pleasure becomes the source of his suffering. Now, Creon is similarly tortured by desire. He stands in as a surrogate father because only Creusa knows that he is not actually Tisiphone and Amphilochus's parent. Creon becomes obsessed with Tisiphone, physically suffering from his sexual desire for her. His struggle is, therefore, directly against the incest taboo as an obstacle to his jouissance. Initially, he resists his incestuous desire, appealing to the laws of prohibition foundational to society. We are civilized, we have our rules, and a man must put his family first. However, as king of Corinth, Creon rules in a society which has, like neoliberal capitalism, shifted from a culture of prohibition to a culture of enjoyment, and he metaphorically identifies himself as the big other to whom all enjoyment is open, musing, "Does Zeus care for the proximity of relationship to the object of his rapacity? He married his own sister Hera, and as Zeus rules Olympus, I rule here. I am Creon, king of Corinth. I'll desire whomsoever I want to desire." When Creon understands himself to exist on an equal plane to the gods, especially to Zeus, he grants himself access to the obscene jouissance normally prohibited by the law of the father, which, ironically, as king and Tisiphone's father, it is Creon's cultural role in this play to enforce. His declaration that he will desire whomsoever he wants signals Creon's acceptance of the obscene injunction to enjoy and the abandonment of prohibition. On a visual or performative level, the shift from prohibition to jouissance is marked by the emergence of the anamorphic stain, which gets repeated throughout the play. In Lacanian psychoanalysis, the anamorphic stain signals the eruption of the real within the symbolic order. The stain appears at first simply as a distortion. As Slavoj Žižek defines it, the element that, when viewed straightforwardly, remains a meaningless stain, but which, as soon as we look at the picture from a precisely determined lateral perspective, all of a sudden acquires well-known contours. And I thought about doing a Zizek impression, but I decided to spare you all. The stain represents a duality. On the one hand, it is a meaningless accidental spot, but when we shift our gaze, it becomes a visual marker of the real. Anamorphic stains are distortions in the fabric of reality, which signal a moment of collapse that threatens to undermine the entire edifice of the social order. As Zizek explains, the real is an anamorphic stain which pops up all of a sudden in the midst of reality. It indicates a process of the ontological disintegration of reality itself. Visually, the stain on Tevin's stage is created by spilled wine, and wine is tied explicitly to sexual desire. Now, in the speech I had just quoted, the transition between Creon's acceptance of the incest taboo and his embrace of jouissance is marked by a servant overfilling his wine glass. Creon admonishes her, "You've overfilled it, the wine's run over. It's stained. It's stained me." At the moment he resolves to abandon the incest prohibition, Creon is marked with a stain. This staining is repeated twice more in the play, both at times when a taboo is about to be violated. After Alcmaeon unknowingly hires his daughter in Aphrodite's temple, she spills wine over her dress as she tries to seduce him. Then, when Amphilochus is about to murder Alcmaeon to prevent him raping Tisiphone's unconscious body, the father warns his son, "The sheets of this bed are now stained, not with your sister's, but with your father's blood." The image of the anamorphic stain recurs around the violation of taboos. The first two times, wine signals the abandonment of the incest prohibition, and with Amphilochus, the blood stain marks the taboo of patricide. Wine is used particularly throughout Tevin's play as a marker of sexual desire. Creon drinks excessively as he struggles with his sexual desire for Tisiphone, and Creusa, who voices his prohibition in asserting her own obscene enjoyment, challenges him, "Creon, have you not had sufficient wine?" Which is, of course, her coded demand that he be sexually satisfied with her and the temple prostitutes, and renounce the sexual enjoyment of their daughter, which seems fair. The wine sexuality imagery coincides more directly in the temple itself, where the chorus of Hetarias utilize an extended metaphor to train Tisiphone to tease and satisfy men. They establish the connection between wine and sexuality, both linked to consumption and enjoyment in the economy of the brothel. But the wine functions not only as a signal for sexual desire, but as an anamorphic stain indicating the erosion of the social order. The repeated use of the stain motif in Alcmaeon and Corinth is a visual marker for thresholds, where the prohibitions upholding social order threaten to collapse, and where, therefore, social order is jeopardized by jouissance. Alcmaeon in Corinth culminates in an ironic deus ex machina in which the goddess Hera resolves the conflicts of the play. Hera's entrance embeds the play meta-theatrically within a structure of desire. Tisiphone refuses to marry Creon, understandably so, since he is, as far as she knew, her father, and he demands, "What? That's no way to end a story." Tisiphone responds, "Is real life not like that? Unsatisfactory?" And Creon says, "Real life? I'm the king and I have all these feelings. I demand a god come crashing through the ceiling." Tisiphone posits the reality of renunciation as a fundamental social assumption against which Creon asserts the necessity of his own enjoyment, at which point Hera appears. The conclusion of the play is that Creon's desire is fulfilled, first in the intercession of Hera at his command, and then in her resolution of the plot problems. Hera comes to reassert the law, but the law is mangled beyond recognition as it blends obedience to the father with a violation of the incest taboo, and retroactively validates Creon's obscene desire. In pursuance of Apollo's oracle that Tisiphone would lose her virginity to her father, Hera proclaims, "Creon, you shall marry Tisiphone. Apollo's oracle said she must lie with her father, and though I'd rather not do this to you, child, oracles must in some way come true." The conundrum of this pronouncement is precisely that it upholds the law of Apollo's oracle through the violation of the incest taboo. The law is refigured as demanding enjoyment. This is the destructive excess of jouissance in which enjoyment destroys rather than brings pleasure or contentment. And of course, this is the foundation of neoliberal late capitalism, where the social imperative to renounce one's desire is abandoned and actual enjoyment becomes impossible. Thank you.